Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku took the mantle of Green Lantern in the Blackest night. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world was screaming. That was the first, most absolute truth in Izuku Midoriya's new reality. It wasn't the familiar, panicked shouting of a villain attack in Muzurifu, a sound he had tragically grown accustomed to. This was different. This was a symphony of primordial terror, a universal chorus of souls being ripped from their moorings. The very air, thick with the coppery tang of blood and the bone-deep chill of a sepulchre, vibrated with it. He crouched behind the twisted metal husk of what looked like a city bus, its side emblazoned with the words, Metropolis Transit Authority. The name was alien, yet hauntingly familiar, like a half-remembered dream. Next to him, Tenya Ida was a statue of coiled tension, his armor scarred and dented, the engines on his legs sputtering with exhaustion. Achiko Uraraka was on his other side, her face pale and smudged with soot, her knuckles white where she gripped the edge of their meager cover. Report. Ida's voice was a low, strained rumble, the commanding tone of the class representative frayed at the edges. Midoriya, what do you see? Izuku risked a glance over the wreckage. The sky was wrong. It wasn't night, it was an absence of day, a suffocating black velvet cloth thrown over the world, devoid of stars, moon, or hope. The cityscape was a nightmarish collage. The sleek, futuristic towers of his own world's Muzurifu stood unnaturally beside Gothic, stone-faced buildings and Art Deco structures he'd only ever seen in pre-Quirk-era comic books. Comics his American father had sent him years ago. A shimmering, glitching seam ran through the sky, the point where their realities had been violently stitched together. But the architecture wasn't the horror. The horror was what moved between the buildings. They were corpses. That much was undeniable. They wore the tattered remnants of vibrant costumes, heroes and villains he didn't recognize, their flesh gray and mottled with decay. But they moved with a terrifying, fluid grace, their eyes two vacant black pits from which a faint, predatory light emanated. On the middle finger of each of their right hands, a black ring pulsed with a malevolent, anti-light. One of them, a gaunt figure in a tattered purple and green suit, turned its head with a sickening crack of vertebrae. Its jaw was unhinged, hanging open in a silent laugh. It pointed a decaying finger towards a group of cowering civilians huddled in the shadow of a fallen statue, a golden monument to a man in a blue suit with a large S on his chest. They're targeting emotion, Izuku whispered, his voice hoarse. His analytical mind, his greatest tool, was struggling to process the impossible data. The ones who are screaming, the ones who are terrified, they go for them first. Our quirks are barely slowing them down, Uraraka said, her voice trembling. Earlier, she had made a chunk of debris weightless and Ida had kicked it at one of the creatures. It had torn right through its chest, leaving a gaping hole. The creature hadn't even flinched. It simply reformed, the black ooze that seemed to serve as its blood knitting the wound shut in seconds. Izuku knew this better than anyone. One for all, the sacred torch passed to him by All Might, felt like a sledgehammer against a tide of smoke. He had landed a 15% Delaware smash directly into the face of a hulking, monstrous thing with bones protruding from its skin. The force had pulverized its head, but the black ring had simply rebuilt it, the creature's empty eyes fixing on him with renewed hunger. It was like fighting nightmares. We can't beat them, Izuku muttered, a cold dread seeping into his bones. It was a thought so antithetical to his being, so contrary to the plus-ultra spirit, that it felt like blasphemy. But it was the truth. We can only slow them down. Their training mission, a joint exercise with a top American hero agency, had been a dream come true. A chance to see the world, to learn from heroes with different philosophies. They had been in a state-of-the-art training facility just outside Metropolis when the sky had gone black and the screaming had begun. The dimensional breach had slammed their worlds together, and the dead had risen. Suddenly, a flash of emerald light streaked across the sky, a stark, beautiful contrast to the oppressive darkness. It was followed by a concussive blast that sent a dozen of the dead things flying. A figure descended, bathed in the same green luminescence. He was humanoid but clearly alien, with skin the color of tanned leather, and 4 powerful arms. He wore a uniform of green, black, and white, with a stylized lantern symbol on his chest. A green ring on one of his fingers glowed with impossible power. With his two upper arms, he created a shimmering green barrier that shielded the trapped civilians. With his lower two, he unleashed a barrage of emerald energy constructs, a pair of roaring lions that tore through the horde, a squadron of miniature fighter jets that strafed them with bolts of hard light. "It's one of them," Ida breathed, a spark of hope in his voice. "The heroes from this world. A Green Lantern." Izuku had read about them in the comics. An intergalactic police force, armed with rings that could create anything the user could imagine, powered by their own willpower. To see one in action was awe-inspiring. The alien hero fought with a confidence and power that dwarfed anything Izuku had ever witnessed. His will was a physical, tangible weapon. Every construct was intricate, powerful, and deployed with tactical precision. The civilians were scooped up in a green energy net and whisked to the relative safety of a rooftop. The Green Lantern, Lyran of Bolavax Vic, his ring had announced to the terrified populace earlier, turned his attention to the larger swarm. But then, the nature of the fight shifted. The dead things, the Black Lanterns as the alien hero had called them, stopped their mindless assault. They turned as one, their empty eyes fixing on the lone point of brilliant green light. A new figure emerged from the shadows. It was a woman, or had been. She wore the tattered remains of a uniform identical to Lyran's. Her skin was ashen, her jaw hanging slack, and a black ring sat on her finger. Lyran froze. The light from his ring flickered for a fraction of a second. "Liana," he whispered, his voice broadcast by the ring and echoing through the desolate streets. The Black Lantern that was once Liana tilted her head. Her voice was a horrifying parody, a gravelly, dead thing trying to imitate life. "You left me to die on Apocalypse, Lyran. You were so focused on the mission. So determined. You didn't even hear me scream. No." The alien hero's constructs wavered, the roaring lions becoming fuzzy and indistinct. "I tried to come back for you. I tried. Your will is strong," the corpse mocked, taking a step forward. "But your heart is full of guilt. Full of fear that you failed. Let us see it. Let us taste it." Izuku watched, paralyzed. This wasn't just a physical battle. It was a psychological vivisection. The Black Lanterns were using the hero's own memories, his own trauma, as a weapon. The swarm surged. Lyran, his will compromised by grief and horror, struggled to maintain his defenses. His shield cracked under the onslaught. A Black Lantern, a hulking brute, smashed through, its claws tearing through the green light. It slammed into the hero, and Lyran cried out, a sound of pure agony. "We have to help him!" Izuku shouted, his body moving before his mind had fully committed. He activated One for All, full cow, green lightning crackling around him. "Midoriya, wait! It's too reckless!" Ida yelled, but Izuku was already gone. He bounded over the wreckage, using the ruined cityscape as his personal parkour course. He could see the Green Lantern, pinned against a wall by three of the monsters. The Black Lantern Liana floated before him, her dead fingers tracing a line down his face. "Your heart is beating so fast," she rasped. "It's full of love. For me. For the core. For the light. Hope. Rage. Avarice. Fear. Compassion. Love. Willpower. All of it. A feast." Her mouth opened, impossibly wide, and a torrent of black energy poured forth. Lyran screamed, a final, soul-shattering cry as the emerald light of his ring was snuffed out like a candle in a hurricane. In its place, a black, oily symbol of a hand appeared in the air, and then a wave of dark energy erupted, vaporizing the hero's body. A black ring flew from the horde and slipped onto his disembodied finger, and a new Black Lantern, a twisted mockery of the valiant hero, began to rise. But something else happened. From the finger of the original, now dead Lyran, the green ring shot off into the black sky. It left a piercing emerald trail, a single shooting star of defiance in the suffocating darkness. Izuku faltered, landing heavily on a shattered rooftop. He had been too late. He had watched a hero die, powerless to intervene. The familiar, bitter taste of failure filled his mouth. The Black Lanterns, their primary target neutralized, turned their collective gaze towards the next brightest emotional hotspots, the terrified civilians on the rooftop, and the three young, emotionally charged heroes in training. "We need to fall back. Now!" Ida's voice crackled through his communicator. He and Uraraka were already moving, herding the civilians they had managed to gather towards the relative safety of a collapsed subway entrance. But Izuku's feet felt rooted to the spot. A small group of people, a mother clutching her young son, an elderly couple, a teenage girl in a torn Metropolis University sweatshirt, were trapped in the ruins of a collapsed coffee shop just below him. The new Black Lantern Lyran and a dozen others were shambling towards them, drawn by the child's terrified sobs. There was no time. Ida and Uraraka were too far away, occupied with their own group. It was just him. He looked at the overwhelming horde. He looked at the terrified family. The choice wasn't a choice at all. It was an imperative. It was the core of his being. A hero is someone who smiles to show that everything is okay, who leaps into action when others are frozen in fear. All Might's voice echoed in his soul, but he wasn't smiling. He was gritting his teeth, his entire body trembling. He was afraid. He was terrified that his legs would break, that his arms would shatter, that his power wouldn't be enough. He was terrified of that empty, hungry look in the Black Lantern's eyes. He was terrified of dying here, in this broken, alien world, so far from home. The fear was a physical thing, a block of ice in his chest. But the drive to save them, the desperate, burning need to protect that crying child, was a furnace. And right now, the furnace was burning hotter than the ice. "It's okay!" he yelled, his voice cracking, but loud enough to draw their attention. He jumped down from the rooftop, landing between the monsters and the family. Green lightning danced around him. "I am here!" he charged, a desperate gambit. He couldn't afford a prolonged fight. He needed to create an opening. He poured more of one for all into his legs than was safe, the muscles screaming in protest. "Manchester!" He leaped into the air, twisting his body into a devastating axe kick, aiming not for a single target, but for the ground in their midst. Smash! The concrete erupted. A shockwave of force and shattered pavement ripped through the street, blasting several of the Black Lanterns back. It bought him seconds. He scooped the small boy into his arms and shoved the mother towards the others. "Run! Get to the subway entrance! Go!" They scrambled away, their sobs mixing with gasps of gratitude. But the Black Lanterns were already recovering. The new Lyran construct floated over the crater, its 4 arms outstretched. "Such will!" It gurgled, its voice a discordant echo of the hero it once was. "Such a desperate need to save everyone. It's beautiful. But you are afraid. You fear failing them. Like you failed him." An image flared in Izuku's mind unbidden. The emaciated, skeletal form of All Might after his battle with All for One. The blood. The pained smile. The fear he had felt in that moment, the soul-crushing terror that his mentor, his idol, was going to die, was suddenly fresh, potent. The Black Lanterns surged forward, their movements faster, more predatory. They were feeding on his fear. He pushed the boy into his mother's arms. "Get back!" He braced himself, channeling one for all through his entire body, preparing for a last, desperate stand. His bones creaked. His vision started to tunnel. He was going to break himself, but he would not let them pass. It was a choice made not from logic or strategy, but from the very fiber of his soul. And in that moment of absolute, terrified resolve, the shooting star changed its course. The streak of emerald light veered sharply, descending from the black sky like a hawk upon its prey. It shot past the Black Lanterns, who hissed and recoiled from its pure, brilliant light. It stopped, hovering an inch from Izuku's face. The world seemed to fall silent. The screams, the guttural moans of the dead, the frantic beating of his own heart, all of it faded into a dull hum. There was only him and the impossibly green, glowing ring. A voice spoke not to his ears, but directly inside his mind. It was calm, ancient, and filled with an immense, resonant power. Scanning, a grid of green light passed over his body, and he felt a strange, intrusive sensation, as if his entire life, every fear, every triumph, every moment of tearful desperation and every surge of heroic determination, was being weighed and measured. Subject, Izuku Midoriya. Planet of origin, Earth, designation Prime 12. Physiology, human, possessing meta-ability designated quirk. Emotional state, acute terror, grief, exhaustion. Dominant counter-emotion, overriding willpower. Unyielding resolve in the face of insurmountable fear. Conclusion, candidate is optimal. Izuku Midoriya of Earth Prime 12. You have the ability to overcome great fear. The ring pulsed, its light intensifying. Welcome to the Green Lantern Corps. Before he could process the words, the ring shot forward. It slipped past his support glove, phasing through the material, and settled onto the middle finger of his right hand. It felt cool, solid, and thrummed with a power that was utterly alien to him. It wasn't the kinetic, explosive energy of One for All. This was a deeper power, a conceptual energy that felt connected to his very thoughts, his very spirit. A wave of emerald light exploded from the ring, engulfing him. It wasn't painful, it was transformative. His tattered hero costume, the gamma suit, shifted and reformed. The dark green fabric of his bodysuit turned a deep, solid black. The armor plates on his arms, legs, and torso turned a brilliant, metallic green. A glowing Green Lantern symbol blazed to life on his chest, right over the spot where his heart was hammering like a drum. His red iron-soled boots remained, a splash of familiar color in the sea of newness. The transformation was seamless, a perfect fusion of his identity and this new, cosmic mantle. The entire process took less than a second. It was just in time. The Black Lantern Lyran, recovering from its aversion to the light, lunged forward, its 4 decaying hands reaching for the civilians huddled behind Izuku. Its dead eyes were fixed on the ring. Ring Thee! Izuku didn't think. He didn't strategize. He didn't even know what he was doing. His every instinct, every fiber of his being, screamed one singular, desperate command: protect them. He threw his right hand up, palm out. A shimmering, circular shield of emerald light erupted into existence in front of him. It was a perfect, translucent disk, glowing with intricate lines of power. The Black Lantern slammed into it with the force of a freight train. The sound was not of metal on metal, but of a pure, resonant chime, like a temple bell. The creature was thrown back, its body sizzling where it had made contact with the pure energy of will. Silence. The remaining Black Lanterns halted, their heads tilted in unison, observing this new, unexpected development. The civilians stared, their terrified gasps replaced with stunned silence. On the other side of the street, Ida and Uraraka, who had turned back to help, froze mid-stride, their eyes wide with disbelief. But no one was more shocked than Izuku Midoriya. He slowly lowered his hand, his arm trembling not from strain, but from sheer, unadulterated shock. The emerald shield dissolved into motes of green light. He stared at his hand, at the glowing green ring that felt both impossibly foreign and perfectly natural on his finger. Images, concepts, and fragments of information flooded his mind, a crash course from the ring itself. The emotional spectrum. OA. The Guardians. Willpower. Fear. Necron. Blackest night. It was too much, a tidal wave of cosmic knowledge that threatened to drown him. But through the deluge, one thing was clear. This ring, this impossible, alien technology, had responded to him. It had taken the deepest, most fundamental part of his being, his desperate, all-consuming will to be a hero, and had turned it into a tangible, physical force. He looked from the ring to the advancing horde of the dead, then back to the terrified family behind him. The fear was still there, a cold knot in his stomach. But now, it was joined by something else, a flicker of something he hadn't felt since the sky went black. A tiny, fragile, but intensely bright spark of hope. He didn't know what this power was. He didn't know how to control it. He didn't know if he was worthy of it. But he was a hero. And a hero uses whatever power they have to save people. He clenched his right fist. The ring flared, bathing him in its determined, emerald light. One for All's green lightning crackled around him, a familiar storm now joined by a strange, new dawn. He had a world to save. Or two. The shield was an extension of his soul. Izuku could feel it, a strange and profound connection that went beyond the physical. It wasn't like the controlled burn of One for All in his muscles. This was a projection of his innermost being, given form and substance by the alien artifact on his finger. It hummed with a resonance that vibrated in his very bones, a perfect, unwavering note of defiance against the cacophony of death that surrounded them. He stared at his hand, at the ring. It was a simple, elegant band of emerald and silver, but it felt heavier than a mountain. 1,000,000,000 screaming libraries had just been forcibly downloaded into his brain, a chaotic jumble of alien star charts, the faces of monstrous tyrants, the history of a 3,600-member intergalactic police force, and the chilling, whispered name of their ultimate enemy, Necron, Lord of the Unliving. The infodump was a migraine of cosmic proportions, leaving him dizzy and nauseous. The black lanterns, momentarily repulsed by the pure light, began to stir. The creature that had once been the hero Lyran pushed itself up, its forearms cracking as they reset. The empty sockets of its eyes fixed on Izuku, and a low, guttural sound rumbled from its chest. It was a sound of recognition. Of hunger. New light. It hissed, the voice a chorus of dead echoes. Fresh will. So bright. So afraid. The word afraid struck Izuku like a physical blow. The ring was powered by will, the data stream had told him. But the black lanterns, they fed on emotion. On hope, turning it to despair. On love, twisting it to obsession. And most of all, on fear, which they devoured like starving wolves. His terror, which he had so successfully pushed down to save the civilians, was a beacon for them, a dinner bell. He needed to fight. He had to use this thing. How? The shield had been instinct. A pure, reactive command, protect. But offense? The ring creates what the wielder imagines, the ring's knowledge whispered in his mind. The more complex the construct, the more focus required. The more powerful the construct, the more will required. Imagine. Okay. He could do that. What was the most powerful thing he could imagine? The answer was immediate, a reflex ingrained in him since childhood. All might. Power. A smash. He pulled his right arm back, mimicking the form he had practiced 1,000 times. He focused on the image of his own fist, but magnified and powered, a pure expression of force. He poured every ounce of his desperate will into that single concept. A colossal, shimmering green fist, the size of a small car, materialized in front of him. It crackled with contained energy, an almost perfect replica of his own gloved hand. He thrust his arm forward. Delaware! Smash! The construct shot forward, silent but devastatingly fast. It slammed into the group of advancing black lanterns. The impact was immense but silent. There was no thunderous boom, only that same pure, resonant chime from his shield, now amplified 100-fold. The monsters were thrown back like bowling pins, their decayed forms shattering on impact, only to be immediately pulled back together by the dark gravity of their rings. Izuku gasped, stumbling back a step. The feedback was all mental. It felt as if he just tried to solve 1,000 complex physics problems in a single second. It was draining in a way he had never experienced. There was no aching in his bones, no tearing of his muscles, just a profound, hollowing exhaustion deep in his mind. But it worked. It bought him time. Midoriya! What is happening? Ida's voice, sharp with confusion and awe, cut through the haze. He and Uraraka were staring, their own small-scale battle forgotten for a moment. I don't know. Izuku called back, his voice shaky. This ring, it just appeared. The black lantern Lyran was back on its feet, its head twisted at an unnatural angle. It pointed one of its 4 decaying fingers at him. The boy hero fears he is not strong enough. He mimics a greater power, a dying power. The embers fade, little light. Soon they will be ash. The words were poison darts, aimed at the deepest insecurities of his heart. The image of All Might's skeletal form, of the last glowing embers of One for All, flashed in his mind. His concentration wavered. The giant green fist flickered, losing its sharp definition. No. I can't let it. He had to be a symbol now. Just like All Might. He needed to show these people, his friends, that everything was going to be okay. He needed a symbol they could see. He shut his eyes, focusing with all his might. He pictured his mentor, not as he was now, but as he was in his prime. The towering height, the impossible physique, the twin bangs of hair like horns, and most importantly, the smile. The indomitable, world-saving smile. He pushed the image out, feeding it with his will, his admiration, his desperation. In the space between him and the dead, a new construct began to form. It was massive, easily 30 feet tall. It was humanoid, with the unmistakable silhouette of All Might. But it was wrong. It was blocky, its proportions skewed, like a child's drawing rendered in 3 dimensions. The colors were flat, the lines were crude. One arm was thicker than the other, and the iconic smile was a slightly lopsided, almost comical grimace. It was a clumsy, heartfelt, and utterly desperate imitation. And it radiated power. The blocky All Might construct took a jerky step forward and swung one of its massive, poorly defined arms. It swept through half a dozen black lanterns, scattering them like dust motes. For a moment, the street was clear. Izuku was panting, sweat beading on his forehead. Maintaining the giant construct felt like holding up a collapsing building with his mind alone. It was too big, too inefficient. He was burning through his willpower at an alarming rate. Just then, a new sound cut through the air. Not the chime of green light or the gurgle of the dead, but the high-pitched whine of a jet engine. A sleek, emerald green F-22 Raptor, perfectly detailed down to the rivets on its fuselage, screamed down the street at rooftop level. It unleashed a volley of shimmering green missiles that slammed into the reforming horde, each one exploding in a contained, silent blast of concussive force. The jet pulled up into an impossible vertical climb, its form dissolving and reshaping midair. The lines of a cockpit, wings, and engines flowed like liquid mercury, solidifying into the form of a man, who landed with a soft thud on the pavement not 20 feet from Izuku. He wore the same green, black, and white uniform as Lyran, though his was clean and untattered. He was human, with brown hair, a strong jaw, and an air of cocky, unshakable confidence. His eyes, however, were old and tired, filled with the grim light of a man who had seen too many battles. He held his own glowing green ring up, scanning the area. His gaze fell on Izuku and his giant, clumsy All Might doll. The man's eyes widened slightly, before narrowing in a look of pure, unadulterated exasperation. "Oh, for the love of Oe!" he muttered, his voice a low, gravelly baritone. He flicked his wrist, and a complex, cage-like construct of green energy snapped into place around the nearest black lantern, trapping it instantly. "What in the 7 hells is going on here?" The ring reported Lyran was down, and I find this. A kid in a knockoff suit playing with a giant action figure. "Who the hell are you?" Izuku's construct flickered and died, dissolving into nothingness. The mental strain was too much, especially with this new, intimidating arrival. "I am Izuku Midoriya. I'm a hero in training." The ring, it just chose me. The man, who Izuku's comic book knowledge was screaming was Hal Jordan, the legendary test pilot, stepped closer. He radiated an aura of authority and raw power that was different from All Might's paternal strength. This was the sharp, dangerous energy of a veteran soldier. "It chose you," Hal repeated, his tone flat and skeptical. He gestured with his chin towards the black lanterns, who were beginning to creep forward again, drawn by the new feast of emotions. "And in the middle of the apocalypse, your first brilliant idea was to make a giant doll? He's a symbol of hope," Izuku retorted, his defensiveness overriding his shock. I hoped it would inspire people. To drive back the fear." "Bad move, rookie," Hal snapped, his gaze never leaving the enemy. A perfectly formed sniper rifle materialized in his hands, and he fired off a single, silent shot that blew the head off a black lantern 50 yards away. "These things eat hope. They eat every emotion on the menu. The only thing that works is a controlled will and a whole lot of firepower. You're flaring like a Roman candle, broadcasting a 5-course meal of raw, teenage angst. You need to get a lid on it, now." The black lantern Lyran floated forward, its attention now split between the 2 green lanterns. "Hal Jordan of Earth," it rasped. "You reek of past failures. Of planets you couldn't save, of friends you watched die. Your will is a fortress built on a foundation of graves. A fortress that is about to crumble." Hal's jaw tightened, the only outward sign that the words had struck a nerve. Yeah, I've heard it all before. Get in line. He glanced at Izuku. Alright, kid. Lesson 1. Stop thinking about punching. The ring isn't a fancy pair of brass knuckles. It's your brain made manifest. Stop reacting and start thinking. What's the most efficient way to disable that thing? Izuku's mind raced. He looked at the Black Lantern Lyran. 4 arms, superior mobility due to flight. It was like fighting a souped-up version of Shoji with a flight quirk. He needed to immobilize it, ground it. We need to bind it, Izuku said, his analytical mind kicking into gear. All 4 limbs, and disrupt its flight path. Good, Hal grunted. So do it. Don't just throw a rock at it. Build a machine for the job. Visualize it. Every nut, every bolt. Make it real. Izuku closed his eyes, taking a shaky breath. He pictured chains. Thick, heavy iron links. He imagined them erupting from the ground, wrapping around the creature's arms and legs. He pushed the thought, the will, through the ring. 4 thick, green chains shot out of the shattered asphalt. They were clumsy, oversized, and slow. The Black Lantern sidestepped them with contemptuous ease. Your will is unfocused, it taunted. Your fear makes it weak. From behind him, Uraraka cried out in alarm. A smaller group of Black Lanterns had flanked them and were closing in on her and Ida. The girl with the brown hair. A different Black Lantern whispered, a skeletal woman in a tattered business suit. She's terrified for you. She loves you. Such a sweet, pure heart. We'll enjoy taking it. Izuku's blood ran cold. He turned, his focus completely shattered. Uraraka! Kid, focus! Hal's voice was a thunderclap. He created a solid wall of green light between the flanking group and Izuku's friends, blocking them off. They're messing with you. That's what they do. You let your fear control you, you're dead. Your friends are dead. Everyone is dead. Is that what you want? No! Izuku yelled, whipping his head back towards Hal. Then stop being afraid. I can't! Izuku screamed, the words tearing from his throat, raw and honest. I'm always afraid. I was afraid when I got my quirk. I'm afraid every time I fight. I'm terrified right now, but I have to fight anyway. That's what being a hero is. Hal Jordan stared at him for a long moment. The cynical, exasperated mask on his face softened, just for a second, into something that looked like understanding. Or maybe respect. Okay, Hal said, his voice calmer. Okay, kid. You're right. It's not about being fearless. It's about functioning anyway. It's about shoving the fear into a box and doing the job. You've got the power. I can feel it. It's like a damn supernova. But it's wild. You need an anchor. You need to focus. He floated over to Izuku, his green aura pushing back the encroaching darkness. He put a hand on Izuku's shoulder. His grip was firm, grounding. The ring is flooding your head with junk you don't need yet. Ignore it. Focus on one thing. The oath. It's not just a password, kid. It's a mantra. A focal point for your will. Do you know it? Izuku's mind sorted through the chaotic data stream and found it. The words felt ancient and powerful. I think so. Then say it. Hal commanded, his voice low and intense. Say it like you mean it. Let the words be your shield. Izuku looked past Hal at the horde of the dead, at the leering face of the corrupted Lyran, at the dark, hungry void in their eyes. He felt the cold tendrils of fear trying to wrap around his heart. He thought of Uraraka and Ida behind Hal's wall, of the civilians they were protecting. He thought of All Might, and the promise he'd made. He took a deep breath, and he spoke. The first words were a trembling whisper. In brightest day, in blackest night, a small spark of defiance. The light from his ring steadied, the wild flickering ceasing. His hope is a candle in a hurricane. A black lantern hissed. It will be extinguished. Izuku's eyes hardened. He looked directly at the creature that had said it. His voice grew stronger, firmer. No evil shall escape my sight. He remembered the villains he had faced. The League of Villains Stain, Overhaul. He remembered their cruelty, the pain they had caused. His resolve, his heroic purpose solidified from a desperate hope into a sharp, diamond-hard conviction. Let those who worship evil's might. The light from his ring began to swell, growing from a glow to a brilliant, radiating aura. Hal took a step back, a small, impressed smile touching his lips. Izuku raised his ring hand, clenching it into a fist. He wasn't just reciting a poem. He was making a vow. To this ring. To this core. To the entire universe. He poured all of his fear, all of his determination, all of his heroic spirit into the final line, shouting it into the face of the abyss. Beware my power! Green Lantern's light! A tidal wave of emerald energy exploded from his body. It wasn't an attack, it was a declaration. The wave of pure will washed over the street, forcing the Black Lanterns back several feet, their forms sizzling and smoking as if splashed with acid. The oppressive darkness seemed to recede, beaten back by the sheer, indomitable brightness of his spirit. When the light subsided, Izuku was panting, but he felt clear. The chaotic noise in his head had subsided. The fear was still there, a cold stone in his gut, but it was no longer in control. It was in the box, just as Hal had said. And his will was a sharpened blade, ready for use. He looked at the Black Lantern Lyran, not as a terrifying monster, but as a problem to be solved. A strategic challenge. He wasn't thinking about a smash anymore. His mind, now clear and focused, was working the way it always did. He was analyzing. Target, Black Lantern Lyran. Abilities, flight, superhuman strength, regeneration, psychological warfare via emotional manipulation. Weaknesses, vulnerable to the combined light of two or more lantern core, ring connection can be severed, susceptible to overwhelming expressions of pure will. His mind flashed through his notebooks, through hundreds of pages of analysis on his classmates and pro-heroes. He thought about their gear, their fighting styles, their support equipment, and an idea, complex and precise, bloomed in his mind. Jordan-san, he said, the honorific coming out by sheer habit. I have a plan. Hal raised an eyebrow. All right, rookie. Let's hear it. Their strength is their ability to regenerate and their psychological attacks. Direct force is inefficient. We need to incapacitate, analyze, and neutralize. Not just destroy. Without waiting for a reply, Izuku put his plan into action. He extended both hands, his brow furrowed in concentration. From his ring, a stream of green light flowed, not forming a fist or a wall, but weaving itself into an incredibly complex, multi-layered construct. It was a glowing, three-dimensional grid, a cage of pure data and light that erupted around the Black Lantern Lyran. Shimmering green lines crisscrossed in intricate patterns, forming a containment field. But it was more than a cage. Along the lines of the grid, characters and symbols in the Green Lantern Corps' native script scrolled rapidly, targeting reticles focused on the Black Lantern's limbs, its head, and the black ring on its finger. It was a perfect, functioning, hard-light replica of one of his own analytical diagrams from his notebooks. A hero analysis grid. The Black Lantern slammed against the grid, but it didn't just hold. It reacted. Green tendrils lashed out from the intersecting lines, wrapping around its forearms and legs, pinning it in the center of the construct. The scrolling data intensified as the grid scanned the creature, analyzing its energy signature, its structural integrity, its connection to its ring. Target acquired. Analyzing power source. Connection to Necron confirmed. Frequency identified. Structural vulnerability located at the junction of the ring and the host's phalanges. The ring's data was now clear, clinical. Useful. Hal Jordan let out a low whistle. He looked from the complex, humming construct to the determined kid who had created it. The boy wasn't just a powerhouse. He was a strategist. Huh! Hal said, the single word conveying a world of surprise and newfound respect. Not bad, kid. Not bad at all. The immediate threat was contained. Izuku let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, the immense mental strain of maintaining the complex construct making his vision swim. Hal clapped him on the shoulder again, this time with a hint of camaraderie. All right, Midoriya. The lesson's over. He turned to face the rest of the horde, his own ring glowing with renewed intensity. A squadron of miniature, buzzing green chainsaws materialized around him. Welcome to the war. The Metropolis Public Library was a fortress of defiant silence in a city of screams. Its grand marble pillars were cracked and scorched, its bronze doors bent inward, but it stood. Hal Jordan, with the casual efficiency of a master craftsman, had sealed the broken archways and shattered stained glass windows with translucent green energy, bathing the cavernous main reading room in a soft, steady emerald light. It was a sanctuary, however temporary. Izuku sat on the floor, his back against a sturdy oak bookshelf, the scent of old paper and ozone filling his lungs. The new uniform felt like a second skin, but the ring was a constant, humming presence, a weight on his finger and in his mind. He was mentally and emotionally drained, the aftermath of the oath and his focused construct leaving him feeling hollowed out, like he'd just taken a 5-hour final exam for a class he didn't know he was enrolled in. Across the room, Uraraka was using her quirk to float medical supplies from a ravaged first aid station to a small group of wounded civilians they had managed to rescue. Her movements were gentle, her expression a mask of determined compassion, but Izuku could see the tremor in her hands. Ida, his armor scarred but his posture ramrod straight, was organizing a defensive perimeter near the main entrance, his quiet, authoritative commands a small point of order in the universe's chaos. Hal Jordan stood near one of the shimmering green windows, looking out at the black, starless sky. "They're pulling back," he said, his voice a low rumble that echoed in the quiet space. "Don't get comfortable. It's not a retreat. They're regrouping. Assessing." "Assessing?" Izuku asked, looking up. He flexed his fingers, and a small, perfectly formed green cube materialized above his palm. He was trying to get a feel for the ring, for the connection between thought and form. "These things aren't just zombies," Hal explained, turning from the window. His gaze fell on Izuku's cube, and a flicker of something, approval, perhaps, crossed his face before being replaced by his usual grim demeanor. "Necron, the entity controlling them, is intelligent, and it's cruel. It learns. It just saw a new, ridiculously powerful light show up on the field. It's sifting through the collective consciousness, through the memories of the dead it's already consumed, looking for your weak points. Looking for ammunition." Izuku's cube wavered and dissolved. "Ammunition? Psychological warfare is their main weapon," Hal said, walking towards him. "They'll find your deepest regret, your biggest failure, your darkest fear. And they will wear its face. They'll find the person you miss the most, the one you feel you failed, and send them to whisper all the things you're terrified are true. I've seen it happen to lanterns with centuries of experience. It breaks them." A cold dread, separate from the generalized terror of the invasion, began to prickle at Izuku's skin. His failures. His regrets. His mind was a minefield of them. The fear of not being able to control One for All, the guilt over Mirio's sacrifice, the constant, gnawing terror for All Might's future. "So what do we do?" Uraraka asked, drifting down to the floor beside Izuku, her work done for the moment. "How do you fight a memory?" "You don't," Hal said, his voice hard as diamond. "You remember it's not them. It's a puppet. A disgusting mockery designed to make you feel something. The second you let yourself feel grief, guilt, even love, they've got you. They feed on it. You have to be a stone. A wall. You feel nothing. You see the enemy, and you eliminate it. That's the only way." Izuku looked down at his hands. Feel nothing? How was that even possible? His emotions were the engine of his heroism, his empathy, his burning desire to save people, his admiration for heroes like All Might. It was the very core of who he was. To become a stone, it felt like a betrayal of himself. As if summoned by his thoughts, the temperature in the grand library began to drop. It wasn't a gradual chill, but a sudden, plunging cold that felt like it was emanating from inside his own bones. The steady emerald light from Hal's barriers began to flicker, as if a great shadow was passing over them. The rescued civilians whimpered, pulling their ragged clothes tighter around themselves. "Contact!" Ida's voice was sharp, cutting through the sudden silence. "Perimeter. Single entity approaching. It's just walking." Hal was instantly alert, a green energy cutlass materializing in his hand. "Stay behind me, all of you." Izuku scrambled to his feet, his heart hammering against his ribs. He willed a simple, circular shield into existence on his left arm, the construct feeling clumsy and weak in the encroaching cold. Through the main archway, past Ida's defensive position, he could see a figure emerging from the oppressive blackness of the street. It was a man in a tattered, formal suit of gray and white. He was tall and impossibly thin, moving with a stiff, unnatural gait. His black hair was matted with grime, and his glasses were cracked, one lens missing entirely. But it wasn't these details that made Izuku's breath catch in his throat, that made the world seem to tilt on its axis. It was the single, gruesome wound. A sharpened spike of rock still slick with dried blood, impaled the center of his chest, a monument to his final, agonizing moments. The man stepped into the emerald glow of the library, and his face became clear. The sharp, intelligent features, now slack and ashen. The piercing eyes, now vacant, black pits from which a dead light emanated. On his finger, a black ring pulsed with a slow, sickly rhythm. Ida and Uraraka looked from the horrifying figure to Izuku, their expressions confused. They didn't recognize him. But Izuku did. Every detail was seared into his memory. No! The word was a choked whisper, a denial against the impossible reality before him. It can't be! Hal Jordan took one look at Izuku's ashen face, at the way his shield was flickering like a dying light bulb, and he understood. Kid, he said, his voice a low, urgent warning. Kid, remember what I said? It's not him. It's a puppet. But Izuku couldn't hear him. The world had narrowed to this one, horrifying specter. The ghost of foresight. The man whose death he had witnessed, whose last words had been a blessing, a prophecy of hope. Sir Night Eye. The black lantern stopped just inside the entrance. It tilted its head, a motion accompanied by the wet, sickening crack of vertebrae. It looked past Hal, its empty gaze locking onto Izuku. And then it spoke. Its voice was not the crisp, analytical tone Izuku remembered. It was a dead thing, a hollow echo dredged from the bottom of a well, flat and devoid of all emotion save a chilling, predatory intelligence. Izuku Midoriya. The sound of his name from those dead lips was a physical blow. The shield on his arm shattered into 1,000 motes of green dust. I foresaw my own death, you know. The corpse continued, taking a slow, deliberate step forward. Every detail. The pain. The failure. And I saw you. Standing there. Powerless to stop it. Just as you were destined to be. That's not true. Izuku stammered, his mind reeling. I retried. Kid, shut it out. Hal barked, stepping in front of Izuku. Don't engage with it. But the words had already found their mark, sinking like poisoned hooks into Izuku's deepest insecurities. The black lantern's empty eyes seemed to look right through him, to see every doubt he'd ever had about himself. You cry so easily, the Night Eye thing said, its voice a monotone of contempt. All Might saw your tears and mistook them for passion. For heroic spirit. But I saw the truth. I saw the weakness. He should have chosen Mirio. He was worthy. He was a true hero. He sacrificed his power for a cause, while you simply inherited a power you never earned. Each word was a perfectly calibrated strike. Mirio's smiling face flashed in Izuku's mind, the guilt of fresh, open wound. He stumbled back, colliding with a bookshelf. The light from his ring dimmed to a faint, pathetic glimmer. He felt a crushing weight on his chest, the weight of all his perceived failures. Midoriya-kun! Uraraka cried out, her voice filled with alarm. She took a step towards him, but Ida put a hand on her shoulder, holding her back, his expression grim. They didn't understand the context of the words, but they could see the devastating effect they were having. The Black Lantern Night Eye glided past Hal, who was forced to step aside to avoid hitting Izuku with a blast. The creature was completely focused on its prey, its psychological assault relentless. You stole his future, Izuku Midoriya. It rasped, now only a few feet away. The smell of the grave wafted from it, a sickly sweet odor of decay. You stand here, wearing a cosmic weapon, a testament to a power you cannot possibly comprehend, while a better man is quirkless because of your sentimentality. You are a child playing with borrowed strength, a pale imitation of a true symbol. Izuku slid down the bookshelf, hitting the floor with a heavy thud. He clutched his head, the creature's words echoing in the screaming vortex of his own self-doubt. It was all true. Every horrible word. He wasn't worthy. He had failed. He was a fake. The ring on his finger felt cold and dead. Its light was nearly extinguished. Seeing its prey broken, the Black Lantern raised its hand, its long, gray fingers reaching for Izuku's chest. "Your heart is overflowing," it whispered, a hint of something like hunger in its dead voice. "So much guilt. So much fear of inadequacy. Let us have it. Let us put an end to your struggle." This was it. He was going to die. Broken by a ghost. He had failed his first true test as a lantern. He had failed everyone. He closed his eyes, bracing for the end. And in the darkness of his own mind, a different memory surfaced. It wasn't the memory of Night Eye's death. It was the memory of his last moments of life. The cold, sterile hospital room. The beeping of the machines. He remembered the feeling of Night Eye's hand, surprisingly warm, on his cheek. He remembered the words, not the hollow, cruel taunts of the monster before him, but the real words, spoken with the last of a great man's strength. "Please smile. A society without cheer and humor will not have a bright future." He remembered the tear that had traced a path through the grime on Night Eye's face. He remembered the final vision Foresight had granted him, not a vision of failure, but a vision of a future where he, Izuku, stood tall and victorious, a true hero, smiling. "I saw it, such a bright future, a future where you saved so many. Keep on your path, do not let that future be changed." The memory was a spark in the overwhelming darkness. A single, defiant point of truth in a sea of venomous lies. The Black Lantern was a lie. The creature before him was not Sir Night Eye. Sir Night Eye had died with dignity, with hope, with a firm and unshakable belief in him. This thing, this puppet of flesh and bone, it was a perversion, a desecration. It was using the face of a man he respected to voice his own deepest fears. A new emotion began to bubble up from the depths of his despair, burning away the cold. It wasn't the blind fury of the red lanterns he'd read about in the ring's data stream. It was a colder, sharper emotion, a righteous, protective anger. An indignation so profound it became a source of strength. How dare you? How dare you wear his face? How dare you tarnish his memory? The light on his finger did not just return. It erupted. A pillar of emerald energy shot up from Izuku's body, slamming into the library's high ceiling and cracking the stone. The force of it threw the Black Lantern Night Eye back, its body tumbling through the air. Hal Jordan threw up a shield to protect himself and the others from the shockwave of pure will. Izuku rose to his feet, no longer trembling. His eyes, burning with a furious green light, were fixed on the monster. The grief and guilt were still there, but they were no longer chains holding him down. They were fuel. "You're a lie," he said, his voice low and steady, resonating with the power of the ring. "Everything you said is a lie. You are nothing but a puppet, a hollow thing twisting a good man's memory into a weapon." The Black Lantern righted itself in midair, its empty eyes fixed on the sudden resurgence of power. "The will is strong, but the heart is still broken. You cannot escape your failures." It raised its hand again, and a series of black, spike-like projectiles formed around it. "I see your future, boy. The same as your mentor's. I see All Might's death. I see the embers of one for all extinguished forever. And I see you, once again, standing by, helpless to stop it." It was the ultimate attack, the fear that haunted his every waking moment. But this time, it didn't find purchase. "No," Izuku said, his voice ringing with absolute conviction. He raised his own ring hand. "You see nothing. You are a creature of death and lies. You have no foresight." But he did, and he saw a different future. He focused, pushing past the pain, past the grief. He didn't think of a weapon to destroy the monster. He thought of a symbol to honor the man. He remembered the day of his work-study interview, the tense atmosphere, the impossible challenge. The moment of approval. A construct began to form in front of him, woven from threads of pure, emerald light. It was complex, intricate, and deeply personal. It was a giant, glowing green replica of the stamp Sir Night Eye had used in his office. A thick handle, a solid base, and on its surface, etched in perfect detail, the words that had meant so much to him, approved for field duty, but Izuku altered it. His will, focused and clear, changed the lettering. The construct solidified, a 10-foot-tall symbol of validation, and the words on its face now blazed with emerald fire. A hero. He believed in me, Izuku declared, his voice booming with the ring's power. He didn't launch the construct as an attack. He held it in front of him, a massive, shining shield of light. His belief is my strength. His memory is my shield. And I will not let you defile it, the Black Lantern shrieked, a sound of pure hatred and frustration, and launched its black projectiles. The spikes of dark energy, which could tear through steel and concrete, slammed into the face of the glowing green stamp. They didn't shatter it. They didn't even scratch it. They simply dissolved on contact, unable to exist in the face of such a pure, emotionally honest expression of will. The light from the stamp was blinding. It wasn't just energy. It was a projection of Izuku's truth, his memory, his conviction. It was the antithesis of everything the Black Lantern represented. The creature recoiled, shielding its face, its gray flesh smoking where the light touched it. It burns! It hissed. The light! Too pure! The emotional truth is repellent! Izuku stood his ground, the monumental construct held steady by his unwavering will. He had faced his ghost. He had looked into the abyss of his own self-doubt, an abyss wearing the face of his mentor, and he had not broken. He had found his anchor in the truth of his memories, and he had forged it into a shield. Seeing his opportunity, Hal Jordan acted. He flew past Izuku, his own light blazing. My turn, puppet! A construct of two massive, interlocking green gears materialized around the Black Lantern. They spun in opposite directions, catching the creature between their teeth. There was a sickening crunch of bone and decayed flesh, and the Black Lantern night eye was torn in two. The two halves fell to the floor, but the black ring's power immediately began to knit them back together. They don't stay down, Hal grunted. He then created a small, intensely bright sphere of green light in his palm. But you can vaporize them. Takes a lot of juice, though. He thrust the sphere forward, and it engulfed the bisected corpse. There was a silent, violent flash of emerald and black, and when the light faded, there was nothing left but the black ring, which clattered to the marble floor before shooting off into the night sky, seeking a new host. The oppressive cold in the library vanished, replaced by the steady, quiet hum of the Green Lantern's power. Izuku let out a shuddering breath, and the giant stamp construct dissolved into fading light. His legs felt weak, and he leaned against the bookshelf for support, the emotional whiplash leaving him dizzy. Uraraka and Ida rushed to his side. Deku-kun, are you okay? Uraraka asked, her eyes wide with worry. That thing, it knew exactly what to say to hurt you, Ida said, his voice a mixture of anger and awe. But you fought back. Your will, it was incredible. Izuku could only nod, his throat too tight to speak. Hal Jordan landed beside him, the grim mask firmly back in place, but his eyes held a new light, a deep, profound respect. Every lantern faces that test sooner or later, he said quietly, so only Izuku could hear. Most of them don't pass it the first time. A lot of them don't pass it at all. He put a hand on Izuku's shoulder. You faced your ghost, and you won. You didn't just build a wall like I told you to. You took the memory that was supposed to be your weakness, and you turned it into your strength. That's the only part of this job that matters. Izuku looked up at the veteran hero, then down at his own hand. The ring on his finger was glowing with a warm, steady light. It no longer felt like a borrowed tool or a cosmic burden. It felt like a part of him. He had learned the second, and perhaps most important, lesson of being a Green Lantern tonight. His heart, with all its connections, all its grief, and all its love, was not a liability. It was the ultimate source of his power. It was the furnace where his will was forged, and in the face of the blackest night, it would be his brightest light. The journey was a silent, vertiginous prayer. Hal Jordan had encased them, Izuku, Ida, Uraraka, and the small cluster of shivering civilians, in a bubble of emerald energy, a perfect sphere that cut through the black sky like a drop tear. Below, the nightmare collage of Metropolis and Muzidafu unspooled. a broken tapestry of two worlds stitched together with threads of chaos and fear. The only light came from the fires raging in the streets and the sickening, intermittent pulses from the black rings of the dead. Izuku pressed a hand against the inside of the bubble. It felt solid, warm, and thrummed with the steady rhythm of Hal's concentration. He watched a swarm of black lanterns, things that looked like birds, their feathers rotted away to leave skeletal wings, slam uselessly against their transport, their silent, screaming beaks scraping against the hard light. "Where are we going?" Uraraka asked, her voice small. She was floating near the center of the bubble, a habit she fell into when stressed, her hands clenched tightly in front of her. "The only place on this rock that's holding out," Hal answered, his eyes fixed forward. He stood at the front of the sphere, one hand outstretched, guiding their flight. "A place of hope, which makes it the biggest target in the system. We're holding a council of war." The use of the word hope made something in Izuku's chest ache. It felt like a foreign concept now, a word from a forgotten language. After the encounter with the mockery of Sir Naitai, he had felt a surge of resolve, a hardening of his will. But now, seeing the sheer, planetary scale of the devastation, the cold dread was seeping back in. His personal victory felt minuscule, a single candle lit in a hurricane. His will was a shield, but what good was a shield when the whole world was drowning? "We're ascending," Ida noted, his voice a low, analytical rumble. He was trying to map their trajectory, to impose logic on a situation that defied it. "Rapidly. We must be tens of thousands of feet up." The city lights, all angry reds and oranges, dwindled below them until they were just a festering sore on the dark skin of the earth. They passed through a thin layer of clouds and then, there was nothing, only the suffocating, starless black. The blackest night was not just an absence of light. It was an active, malevolent presence. It felt like it was pressing in on them, trying to crush their little bubble of green will. And then they saw it. At first, it was just a pinprick of white-blue light in the void. But as they drew closer, it resolved into a structure of impossible, crystalline beauty. It was a fortress, jagged and majestic, carved from what looked like a glacier and set adrift in the upper atmosphere. Towers of ice and crystal soared into the blackness, each one catching and refracting the light from a central, sun-like orb that burned within the fortress's heart. It was a place of profound solitude and breathtaking science. The Fortress of Solitude. Even in its current state, it was magnificent. But it was a beauty under siege. Cracks ran like dark veins through some of the crystalline walls. One of the highest spires had been sheared clean off, and swarming around it, like carrion flies on a diamond, were thousands of black lanterns. A pitched battle was raging at its perimeter, flashes of brilliant color clashing against the endless tide of the dead. "They're here, too!" Izuku whispered in awe and horror. "They're everywhere," Hal said grimly. "But this is where we make our stand." He guided the transport bubble towards a fissure in the fortress's outer wall, a jagged wound sealed with the same green energy he was projecting. They phased through it, the transition smooth and silent, and suddenly they were inside. The interior was even more spectacular. The air was cold, clean, and hummed with the energy of alien technology. Crystalline walkways crisscrossed the cavernous space filled with artifacts from 1,000 worlds. A phantom projection of a swirling red and gold galaxy hung in the center of the room. But the pristine laboratory had been converted into a grim command center. Holographic screens displaying casualty reports and troop movements flickered beside Kryptonian data crystals. Wounded figures in strange uniforms were being tended to by beings with skin of blue, gray, and green. The floor was scuffed with the grime of battle, and in the center of it all, gathered around the holographic galaxy, were the architects of this desperate war. They were beings of such immense power that the very air around them seemed to warp and shimmer. They were a living spectrum of emotion. The first to notice their arrival was a man who radiated an aura of cold, immaculate order. He was tall and regal, with magenta skin, pointed ears, and a severe, aristocratic face. He wore a uniform of black and gold, and the yellow ring on his finger pulsed with a sharp, disciplined light. He was seated on a throne of perfectly symmetrical, golden-yellow energy, his posture one of utter disdain for the chaos around him. This was Sinestro, wielder of the Light of Fear. "Jordan!" Sinestro's voice was a cultured, condescending drawl that cut through the low din of the room. Still collecting stray animals, I see. What is this? Your new protégé? He looks like he's barely out of the nursery. Hal's transport bubble dissolved, and they stepped onto the crystalline floor. The civilians were quickly ushered away by a floating robotic drone. He's the new recruit from Sector 2814, Sinestro, Hal said, his voice tight. The ring chose him. Deal with it. Sinestro's gaze, sharp and analytical as a scalpel, fell upon Izuku. It wasn't a glance. It was an invasive scan. He saw the tattered remnants of his original hero costume beneath the Green Lantern uniform, the nervous energy in his posture, the raw, untamed power flaring around him. Indeed, Sinestro said, a thin, cruel smile touching his lips. It chose a sentimental child who wears his emotions like a garish carnival costume. Fear, grief, a pathetic glimmer of hope. You are an open book, boy, and it is a tragedy. The Corps has fallen far indeed if this is the best it can muster. Izuku flinched as if struck. The man's words were precise, designed to inflict maximum psychological damage. He felt his own fears of inadequacy rising up again, the same ones the Black Lantern Knight Eye had exploited. But this time, the memory of his victory over that creature was a fresh, hardening resolve. He met Sinestro's gaze, straightened his back, and said nothing. A deep, guttural roar of a laugh echoed from the other side of the holographic map, drawing everyone's attention. A monster stood there, a being of pure, unadulterated rage. He was a behemoth, with skin the color of dried blood, and features twisted into a permanent snarl that revealed rows of vicious teeth. Crimson energy, thick and viscous as plasma, steamed off his body, and the air around him shimmered with heat. This was Atrocitus, leader of the Red Lantern Corps. Do not be so quick to dismiss him, Corrigarian! Atrocitus bellowed, his voice like grinding rocks. He pointed a massive, clawed finger at Izuku. I can smell it on him! Beneath the fear, beneath the mewling hope, there is rage. A deep, burning well of it. Atrocitus stomped forward, each step shaking the crystal floor. He loomed over Izuku, a mountain of fury. The heat coming off him was intense, and Izuku could smell the acrid, coppery scent of burnt blood. It is a righteous anger! Atrocitus growled, his red eyes boring into Izuku's. The rage against the slaver who takes a life. The fury against the tyrant who grinds a world to dust. The hatred for the one who hurts the innocent. It is the rage that fuels my core. You have it, boy. You have the heart of a red lantern, wasted on this green candle of order. Izuku was frozen, not by fear this time, but by the shocking truth in the monster's words. He did have that rage. He felt it whenever he thought of Shigaraki and the decay he wrought, of All for One and the lives he'd stolen, of Overhaul and what he'd done to Eri. It was a cold, clean fury that he had always channeled into the force of his smashes. Atrocitus saw it, recognized it, and coveted it. It was a terrifying, validating, and deeply unsettling realization. Before he could respond, a third figure glided into the space between them. She was a tall, slender woman with dark purple skin and white, tribal markings on her face and body. She carried a long staff that glowed with an indigo light, and the ring on her finger pulsed with the same color. She was Indigo One, leader of the Indigo tribe. She placed herself between Atrocitus and Izuku, her expression serene and unreadable. She looked at the raging behemoth and spoke, but her words were in a language that sounded like a flowing river, a series of clicks and soft tones that no one else seemed to understand. Yet, Atrocitus recoiled as if she had screamed a curse at him, a flicker of something, shame? Fear, crossing his monstrous features before being consumed again by rage. He backed away, grumbling. Indigo One then turned her calm, knowing gaze on Izuku. She reached out and gently placed a hand on his chest, directly over the glowing green symbol of the Corps. Her touch was cool and sent a strange, placid sensation through him. It felt like a deep, silent understanding, a wave of empathy so profound it was almost overwhelming. It quieted the anger that Atrocitus had stirred up, and it soothed the sting of Sinestro's words. She leaned in close and whispered a single word in her alien tongue. Knock. Then she nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement, and glided back to her position, a silent, enigmatic pillar of compassion in the center of the storm. What was that? Izuku asked, looking to Hal. Don't ask, Hal muttered. Nobody really knows how the Indigo tribe works. Just be glad she's on our side. It was then that the final member of the council, who had been tending to a wounded alien soldier, turned his attention to them. And it was like the sun rising after a long, dark night. He was a tall, gangly being with pale blue skin and large, kind eyes. He wore simple blue and white robes, and the blue ring on his finger shone with a gentle, unwavering light that seemed to push back the ambient gloom of the fortress. His presence was the complete antithesis of Atrocitus's heat and Sinestro's cold. It was a comforting warmth, a sense of profound peace. He was Saint Walker, the first and most powerful of the Blue Lanterns. He approached Izuku not with judgment or aggression, but with a wide, beatific smile. Greetings, new Green Lantern. His voice was a soft, melodic tenor, filled with an unshakable optimism. My apologies for the boisterous introductions of my comrades. The night is long, and tempers are short. He stopped in front of Izuku, his kind eyes scanning him, but unlike Sinestro's piercing gaze, this felt like a gentle embrace. I felt your arrival. A new will has joined the fight, but I feel something else in you. Something that shines even brighter. Saint Walker's smile widened. In the face of annihilation, in a world not your own, surrounded by horrors that would break a veteran soldier, you stood your ground. You shielded the innocent. You fought back. You hold a deep and abiding hope in your heart, Izuku Midoriya. A belief that things can, and will, be better. As he spoke, the blue light from his ring began to intensify. It reached out, not as a beam, but as a gentle wave of energy, and washed over Izuku, and the world changed. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. The exhaustion in Izuku's bones vanished. The mental fatigue from his earlier constructs evaporated. The nagging dread that had been a constant companion since the sky turned black was silenced, replaced by a feeling of crystal-clear clarity and boundless potential. The light from his own green ring surged, flaring to life with an intensity that made him gasp. Its power output, which the ring dutifully reported in his mind, shot past 100%, climbing to 200%, then 300%, and beyond. The energy felt limitless, a raging river where before there had only been a trickling stream. He felt like he could build a city out of pure light, that he could push the planet back into its proper orbit with a single thought. The blue light of hope empowers and supercharges the green light of will, Saint Walker explained, his own ring now blazing. So long as hope shines, a Green Lantern's will is never truly spent. Your own hope is a mighty beacon, little one. It has made you a formidable ally. He raised his own ring hand in a gesture of benediction. In fearful day, in raging night, with strong hearts full, our souls ignite. When all seems lost in the war of light, look to the stars, for hope burns bright. All will be well, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku stared, speechless. The phrase, all will be well, resonated deep within him. It was the core message of every hero, the promise All Might embodied with his smile. To hear it spoken here, at the end of the universe, by this serene blue alien, was the most profound reassurance he had ever felt. The moment was broken by Sinestro's scoff. Enough with the sentimental poetry, Walker. Your hope is a pleasant fiction, a child's bedtime story. It is fear that motivates, fear that controls, fear that will ultimately win this war. Fear of death is what will drive the living to fight. Fear leads to panic, Sinestro. Hal countered, stepping forward. Willpower is what holds the line, and rage is what will burn our enemies to ash. Atrocitus roared, slamming his fist on the holographic map, causing the galaxy to glitch. The argument erupted anew, a chaotic symphony of the emotional spectrum. The leaders, these cosmic beings of unimaginable power, began to bicker like a dysfunctional family, their respective energies crackling in the air. And in the middle of it all stood Izuku Midoriya, supercharged with hope, his mind clearer than it had ever been. For the first time, he wasn't just reacting. He wasn't just a terrified kid in over his head. He was observing. He was analyzing. The part of his brain that had been dormant since his arrival, the obsessive, analytical core of his being, roared to life. He wasn't just seeing powerful aliens anymore. He was seeing quirks. He was seeing combat styles. He was seeing strengths, weaknesses, and potential synergies. His mind began to race, the thoughts forming as if he were writing in one of his notebooks, the letters etched in green light in the back of his consciousness. Cosmic Hero Analysis for the Future Entry 1. Subject: Sinestro, Yellow Lantern Core, Power Source: Fear. Observations: Arrogant, controlling, elitist. Reminds me of Endeavor in his early days, but on a cosmic scale. Believes in order through intimidation. His constructs are a reflection of this. They are perfect, intricate, and efficient, but lack creativity. They are weapons and cages, nothing more. He seeks to dominate, not to protect. Strengths: immense discipline and focus. Unshakable self-confidence, or perhaps arrogance. His power is likely very effective against undisciplined or cowardly foes. His strategic mind seems sharp, though limited by his rigid worldview. Weaknesses: overconfidence. Inability to inspire loyalty, only fear. His power requires a target to be afraid. A fearless opponent, or one who masters their fear, would likely be a major problem for him. His philosophy is a brittle one. It can be shattered by genuine heroism and hope. He cannot comprehend self-sacrifice. Synergy. Potentially useful for crowd control and terror tactics against the Black Lanterns, but his methods could cause widespread panic, which would only feed the enemy. He is a double-edged sword, must be watched. Subject: Atrocitus, Red Lantern Core, Power Source: Rage. Observations: a being of pure, primal fury. His power is a wildfire, immensely destructive but almost completely without control. He speaks of righteous rage, and I can understand that, but his rage is all-consuming. It doesn't distinguish between targets with any real precision. He is a force of nature, not a soldier. Reminds me of Bakugokuin's early rage, but without any of the underlying desire to be a hero. This is rage for the sake of rage. Strengths: unbelievable raw power. His plasma-like energy seems to be more destructive than standard light constructs, capable of melting through enemy defenses. He is utterly relentless and cannot be intimidated. Weaknesses: zero strategy or subtlety. He is a blunt instrument. His rage makes him predictable. It could be used against him, to lure him into traps. The Red Lantern's power also replaces their heart. They are literally living on borrowed time fueled by anger. This seems like a critical flaw. What happens when the rage fades? Synergy, a perfect frontline shock trooper. Could be used to draw the main force of the Black Lanterns, as his immense emotional output would be an irresistible target. But he cannot be directed, only unleashed. High risk, high reward. Subject: Indigo 1, Indigo Tribe. Power Source: Compassion. Observations: the most enigmatic. Her power doesn't seem to be for direct combat in the same way as the others. Her ability to pacify Atrocitus suggests a power that works on an emotional level, rather than a physical one. The Rings database says the Indigo Tribe can channel the light of other core. This is a vital piece of information. She feels ancient. Her compassion is not a soft, gentle thing. It feels more like the profound, unyielding compassion of a surgeon who must hurt to heal. Strengths: the ability to manipulate and channel other emotional energies is a game-changing strategic asset. Her calming influence could be vital for maintaining morale and focus among the other, more volatile core. Weaknesses unknown. Her direct combat capabilities seem limited compared to the others. Is her compassion a weapon or a tool? Is she dependent on the emotions of others to be effective? More data needed. Synergy, a crucial support role. She could potentially act as a conduit, allowing the different core to work together in ways they normally couldn't. Imagine channeling blue hope through red rage, the power of a wildfire with the purpose of a controlled burn. The possibilities are immense. Subject: Saint Walker, Blue Lantern Core. Power Source: Hope. Observations: the emotional bedrock of this alliance. His power is not aggressive, it is supportive, restorative, and amplifying. He is the ultimate force multiplier. His presence alone is a tactical advantage, boosting the morale and power of everyone around him. He embodies the core principle of a hero, to inspire others to be better, to be stronger. Strengths: ability to supercharge Green Lantern rings. His light can heal, restore, and create defensive barriers. He seems to have a calming, clarifying effect on the mind. The blue lanterns are likely the most resilient to the black lantern's psychological attacks, as hope is the ultimate antidote to despair. Weaknesses. The ring's data states that a blue lantern ring, without a green lantern nearby to supercharge their will, is limited to basic flight and a defensive aura. They are almost entirely dependent on the presence of the green light. This is a critical codependency. Synergy. Absolutely essential. A blue lantern should be assigned to every green lantern squad. The combination of limitless will, green, and boundless hope, blue, is exponentially more powerful than either alone. I can feel it. I feel like I could face anything right now. Izuku blinked, the flood of analysis leaving him breathless. He looked at the arguing leaders not as gods or monsters, but as pieces on a chessboard. A cosmic, terrifying chessboard, but a chessboard nonetheless. And for the first time, he saw a path. A strategy. A glimmer of a chance. He was no longer just a lost kid from another world who had stumbled into a war. He was a Green Lantern. A hero in training with a unique analytical mind. And standing here, in the heart of a Kryptonian fortress, surrounded by a spectrum of heroes, supercharged by the very essence of hope, he understood his new place in the universe. He was a soldier. He was a symbol. And he had a world, no, a universe, to help save. He looked down at his right hand. The ring was blazing with a light so bright it was almost white, a fusion of his own indomitable will and the boundless hope that Saint Walker had awakened within him. The storm of emotions and powers raged around him, but in his heart, for the first time since the Blackest night began, all was well. The crystalline halls of the Fortress of Solitude were a library of miracles, a museum of the impossible. In one alcove, a collection of shrunken, bottled cities pulsed with miniature suns. In another, suits of alien armor stood silent sentinel, etched with languages that had died a billion years before the first human looked to the stars. And everywhere, the quiet, ambient hum of Kryptonian technology, a ghost symphony of a dead world. For any other teenager, it would have been the ultimate field trip. For Izuku Midoriya, it was the most stressful training ground imaginable. The battle for the fortress had reached a temporary lull. The combined might of the lanterns had driven the Black Lantern swarm back, creating a perimeter of colored light that held the endless night at bay. But it was a fragile peace, a moment to catch a collective breath before the tide of death inevitably surged again. This fragile respite was, for Izuku, a crucible. He stood in a vast, empty chamber that Superman had apparently used for sparring. The walls were made of a crystal that absorbed and dissipated kinetic energy, preventing the Man of Steel from accidentally punching a hole through his own home. Today, they were absorbing the kinetic energy of a 17-year-old boy trying to reconcile two impossible powers. Focus, Midoriya, Hal Jordan's voice echoed from the side of the chamber, where he was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, observing. You've got the will. You've got the brain. But in a fight, you've got the finesse of a wrecking ball. Izuku gritted his teeth, sweat stinging his eyes. He stood in a ready stance, his Green Lantern uniform gleaming. Red lines, like superheated veins, were visible under the black fabric of his suit, the telltale sign that he was channeling one for all. I'm trying, Jordan-san, he gasped out. Before him hovered a single, complex construct, a perfect sphere of emerald light. Inside the sphere, a miniature galaxy swirled, each tiny star and nebula meticulously rendered from his memory of the fortress's main display. It was a test of focus, of fine control, an exercise Hal had devised to teach him that the ring wasn't just for building giant fists. Maintaining it required a constant, gentle pressure of will, like a surgeon holding a scalpel steady. Now, Hal commanded. Power up your quirk. Just 5%. Izuku took a deep, steadying breath. One for all, full cowl. 5%. The green lightning of his inherited power crackled to life, dancing over the surface of his uniform. His muscles tensed, infused with a familiar, controllable energy. He could feel the power of generations humming just beneath his skin, a comforting and familiar presence. The construct before him, the miniature galaxy, remained stable. Good, Hal grunted. See? They can coexist. One is mental, one is physical. Two separate power sources. Now push it. 10%. Full cowl, 10%. The lightning intensified, the hum in his muscles growing louder. He could feel the strain, a slight tremor starting in his hands. The miniature galaxy in his construct began to wobble, the tiny stars blurring at the edges. Steady, kid, Hal's voice was sharp. Don't let the physical feedback disrupt your mental focus. They are separate. Keep them separate. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut, pouring more of his will into the construct, fighting to stabilize it. He was trying to build a wall in his mind, a partition between the raw, kinetic energy of One for All and the focused, conceptual energy of the ring. It felt like trying to pat his head and rub his stomach while simultaneously solving a calculus equation and juggling chainsaws. 15%, Hal ordered, his voice relentless. Full cowl. 15%. The power surged. This was his comfortable limit, the percentage he could use in combat without shattering his own bones. But the effect on his concentration was immediate and disastrous. The beautiful, intricate galaxy construct convulsed violently. The sphere warped, elongating into a wobbling oval. You're losing it, Midoriya. Hal snapped. Control. I'm trying. Izuku yelled, his teeth clenched so hard his jaw ached. The two powers felt like opposing magnetic forces, pushing against each other, creating a chaotic dissonance that echoed in his skull. Don't just try, do it. The Black Lanterns aren't going to give you a timeout because you're having trouble multitasking. 20%. This was the edge. The danger zone. He normally only used this percentage for single, powerful strikes. Maintaining it was a massive strain. One for all, full cowl. 20%. The world exploded in green. The lightning around his body flared wildly, no longer just crackling but roaring. The construct didn't just destabilize, it detonated. An uncontrolled wave of raw will and kinetic energy blasted outwards. Izuku was thrown back, slamming into the far wall with a pained cry. The crystal wall flared brightly, absorbing the impact, but his head still swam, his vision filled with black spots. He slid to the floor, gasping for breath. His right arm, his ring hand, was screaming in agony. It felt like every nerve from his shoulder to his fingertip had been set on fire. A thin trail of smoke curled up from the ring itself, which was flickering erratically. A voice, cold and robotic, spoke directly into his mind from the ring. Warning, unregulated biometric energy surge detected. Conflict with willpower channeling. System overload imminent. Synchronization required. Synchronization required. Izuku mumbled, clutching his arm. Hal was at his side in an instant, his face a mixture of concern and frustration. He knelt, examining the smoking ring. I told you to keep them separate. What did you do? I don't know, Izuku said, his voice strained. It felt like I was trying to pour two different kinds of energy through the same tiny hole. It just fed back on itself. Hal sighed, running a hand through his hair. All right, that's it for the fine control exercises. We're thinking about this all wrong. He stood up, pacing back and forth. This One for All, it's not just a physical enhancement, is it? It's more than that. Izuku pushed himself up, wincing. It's a stockpile of power, passed down from one person to the next. It's grown stronger with each generation. All Might told me that it also holds the consciousness, the vestiges, of the previous users. Hal stopped pacing, his eyes widening slightly. Vestiges? Like ghosts in the machine? Sort of, Izuku said. They're more like echoes. Memories. Their will is part of the quirk. The word will hung in the air between them. Hal stared at Izuku, a new understanding dawning on his face. Okay, now I get it. It was never two separate power sources, kid. That was the problem. He pointed at Izuku's chest. One for All isn't just in your muscles. It's a legacy of willpower. It's 8 generations of heroes focusing their will, their desire to save people, into a single point and passing it on. It's practically a damn Green Lantern battery all by itself. You're not just channeling your own will through the ring, you're trying to shove the will of 8 other people through it at the same time. The realization hit Izuku like a physical blow. It made perfect, terrifying sense. The dissonance he felt, the overload, it was the conflict between his own nascent, untrained will and the chorus of powerful, heroic wills embedded in his very soul. The ring was designed for a single user, a single mind, a single will. He was trying to use it as a committee. So, what do I do? Izuku asked, looking down at his trembling hand. I can't just turn one for all off. It's a part of me. And I need it. The ring is powerful, but my body is still just a normal teenager's. Without one for all, I don't have the speed or strength to keep up. No, you can't turn it off, Hal agreed. And we can't separate them. So we do what the ring said. We synchronize them. He started pacing again, his mind clearly working at high speed. We stop thinking of them as two different powers. We have to treat them as one system. The ring is the focusing lens, and your quirk is the power source. Not just the physical power, but the willpower behind it. He stopped and looked at Izuku, his eyes gleaming with an idea. Instead of using the ring to create things outside of you, what if you used it to regulate the power inside of you? The concept was so simple, so elegant, that Izuku felt a fool for not thinking of it himself. He had always seen the ring as a tool for external projection, but it was a machine that responded to will, and his quirk was a power he controlled with will. You mean, use the ring's constructs on myself? Izuku asked, his mind racing. Exactly, Hal said. One for all breaks your body when you use too much, right? Because your body can't handle the energy output. But what if your body wasn't the container anymore? What if you built a better container with the ring? Izuku's eyes went wide. His support gear, his gloves, his iron saws, they were all designed to mitigate the destructive backlash of his own power. But they were physical objects, limited by materials and design. A construct, however, was limited only by his imagination and his will. He stood up, the pain in his arm already receding, replaced by a surge of excitement. The possibilities were endless. I can create armor. Gauntlets to reinforce my arms. Greaves to support my legs. Not just simple plates, but constructs designed to channel the flow of one for all, to act as a circuit instead of a container. Now you're thinking like a lantern, Hal said with a smirk. Forget the giant action figures. Build something useful. Something personal. Create a support item that only you could possibly design, because it's built to interface with a power that only you have. Izuku closed his eyes, his analytical mind kicking into overdrive. He didn't just picture armor. He visualized schematics. He saw energy channels, pressure distributors, shock absorbers. He thought about Mahatsum's wild, brilliant inventions, but freed from the constraints of physics and materials. He took a deep breath and activated one for all again, starting at a low, stable 5%. The green lightning returned, a familiar crackle. This time, he didn't try to build a wall between it and the ring. He tried to build a bridge. He focused on his right arm, the one that had taken the brunt of the feedback. He extended his will, not outwards, but inwards, wrapping it around his own limb. A shimmering, translucent green light began to form over his skin, tracing the lines of his muscles and bones. It wasn't a solid gauntlet. It was more like a second skin of pure energy, a complex lattice of light. He could feel it instantly. The wild, chaotic energy of one for all, which always felt like holding a live power cable, was suddenly smoothed out. The flow was more even, more controlled. The ring's construct was acting like a sophisticated regulator, containing and directing the power. Okay, he breathed, his eyes still closed in concentration. Okay, I think this is working. Jordan-san, 10%. He pushed the power up. The lightning intensified, but this time, there was no feedback, no chaotic dissonance. The energy lattice on his arm brightened, its pattern shifting and adapting in real time to the increased power flow. It felt stable. 15%. The power rose again, and the construct solidified, becoming less of a lattice and more of a solid, form-fitting piece of armor, glowing with a steady, powerful light. The feeling was incredible. The usual strain on his muscles and bones was almost completely gone, absorbed and redistributed by the emerald armor. 20%. This was the real test. He channeled the power, bracing for the usual backlash, the tearing sensation in his tendons. But it never came. The green gauntlet flared, absorbing the kinetic shock, humming with contained power. He felt the strength, the speed, the raw force of 20% full cowl, but without any of the debilitating physical costs. He opened his eyes and looked at his arm. It was encased in a beautifully complex piece of emerald armor, intricate lines of light pulsing in time with his own heartbeat. It was a perfect synthesis. A wide, triumphant grin spread across Izuku's face. It works. It actually works. He then focused on his other limbs, replicating the process. A matching gauntlet formed on his left arm. Greaves of light encased his legs from knee to ankle, perfectly integrating with his iron-soled boots. A cuirass of segmented green armor settled over his torso and shoulders, reinforcing his core. The entire process took only seconds, the constructs flowing into place as fast as he could think of them. He stood there, fully clad in his new, hybrid armor. The green lightning of One for All now danced over the surface of the green constructs, the two energies no longer in conflict but in perfect, terrifying harmony. The power thrumming through his body was immense, controlled, and completely stable. Hal Jordan let out a low whistle of appreciation. Holy. Okay, kid. That's new. I've never seen anyone do that before. I can go higher, Izuku said, the realization dawning on him, his voice filled with a giddy, trembling awe. The armor, it can handle it. I think I can go higher. This was the key. This was the breakthrough that had eluded him for so long. The quest to master One for All wasn't just about strengthening his body. It was about finding a way to safely contain a power that was designed to be limitless. And a ring that could create anything he could imagine was the ultimate container. All right, let's see it, Hal said, a thrill of anticipation in his voice. But take it slow. One step at a time. Izuku nodded, his expression hardening with focus. He took a fighting stance, the one All Might had taught him. He could feel the vestiges within the quirk, not as a conflicting chorus, but as a silent, supportive presence. It felt like they were watching, waiting. One for All full cowl. He took a deep breath, pushing past his old limits. 30%, a shockwave of air erupted from his body. The floor beneath his feet cracked, the Kryptonian crystal finally showing signs of strain. The green armor around him blazed with a light so intense it was nearly white. The power was intoxicating, a tidal wave of strength that made his 20% feel like a child's game. But there was no pain. No strain. Only pure, focused power. How does it feel? Hal asked, his own ring glowing slightly as a precaution. It feels. Izuku looked at his hands, clenching them into fists. The armor responded instantly, tightening, reinforcing. It feels right. It feels like this is how it was always supposed to be. He needed to test it. He needed a target. He looked around the empty chamber. The wall, he said. Go for it, Hal replied. This place was built to take a punch from Superman. Let's see if it can take one from you. Izuku turned to face the far wall. He bent his knees, channeling the immense power into his legs. The greaves glowed, dissipating the strain. He remembered All Might's words about visualizing an egg in a microwave, about not letting it explode. He wasn't just holding the power, he was commanding it. He chose a name for his new state, a name that honored both sources of his newfound strength. Full cowl ring bound, he launched himself forward. He didn't just run, he erased the distance in a blink, leaving a trail of shattered crystal in his wake. The speed was breathtaking. He pulled his right arm back, the gauntlet blazing. He focused all the power of 30% One for all the focused will of the ring, into a single point. He thought of All Might, of his unwavering strength. He thought of Sir Night Eye, of his belief in the future. He thought of Saint Walker, of the hope that burned bright. All of it, the power, the will, the emotions, converged into his fist. He didn't name the smash after a city in America. This was something new. Something born of two worlds. He gave it a name that reflected its cosmic origin. St. Louis Smash. Starlight. His fist connected with the wall. For a moment there was no sound. Only an impossibly bright flash of emerald light. Then, the sound hit, not a crack, but a deep, resonant boom that shook the entire fortress to its foundations. It was the sound of a star being born and dying in the same instant. A web of cracks, glowing with residual green energy, spread out from the point of impact, covering a 20-foot section of the wall. The Kryptonian crystal, designed to withstand the force that could move planets, had fractured. Izuku stood before the wall, his arms still extended. His gauntlet was still intact, humming with power. His body was fine. No broken bones. No torn muscles. He was completely, utterly unharmed. He slowly lowered his arm, panting, the adrenaline singing in his veins. He had done it. He had shattered his limits. He had fused the legacy of Earth's greatest heroes with the power of the cosmos. He turned to look at Hal, a wide, slightly dazed smile on his face. I think I'm getting the hang of this. Hal Jordan was just staring at the fractured wall, his jaw slightly agape. He looked at the wall, then back at the panting, smiling teenager who looked like he just hit the game-winning home run. Kid, Hal said, his voice filled with a new level of awe and a healthy dose of fear. We are going to win this war.